Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, and welcome to another episode of Media Matters for Anfield Index. It's the international break. No one's really a fan of those, are they, to be honest? People are a fan, though, of being 12 points clear at the top of the league. Some people saying it's just the title. Absolute bobbins. But here to talk about that title, players, contracts, transfers, and everything else on the Liverpool patch is the renowned and the respected Daily Mail writer, Lewis Steele. I'm guessing, Lewis, just enjoying a little bit of downtime at the moment with it being an international break?
Oh, yeah, lots of downtime, mate. It's a lovely day outside, nice blue skies here. So, yeah, there's not much to do this week for me, but that is a very welcome thing because the last few months have been absolutely relentless. I think since November, it's been pretty much non-stop. Liverpool pretty much Sunday, Wednesday.
Yeah.
When you throw in the press conferences, travel, covering Everton as well, which I have to do. It's been pretty much non-stop. It's been hard to take a day off. So I'm hopefully going to have a couple of nice long days off in the next week or so.
Yeah, and let's be honest, people, no one really wants to cover Everton either. So that's been on Lewis's watch recently. But we'll get into it. We'll talk about the latest stories. We'll talk about the latest things. And it probably makes sense, Lewis, to start with recent pieces from yourselves because there's been quite a few. And I know even one this morning came out, the confidential column for the Daily Mail. Now, with this one specifically, I wanted to ask you about it because this is the phrasing you'll have seen just keeps coming up time and time again in various news outlets, media articles, however you wish to phrase it, that Liverpool are quote unquote just going to win the title because it's been, a bit of an issue with things recently. I mean, this is absolute nonsense, this, isn't it? Anyone would have snapped your hand off for a title charge like this and being in this position at the start of the season.
It is absolute nonsense, as you say. I think you've put it spot on there, to be honest. You have to cast your mind back to the start of the season or even further when Jurgen Klopp announced he was leaving. I think everyone saw realistically that top four or top five, as it this season for the Champions League, would have been par for the course for Liverpool. I think top four and maybe a cup final would have represented a really, really strong first season for Arne Slot. He wasn't backed in the summer, whether that was through design or not. There was only one sign and it was 10 million quid, which is, loose change basically in this day and age. He didn't get the players he necessarily wanted. And I think because of that, top four would have been a brilliant season. To go beyond that makes it a sensational season. Now, obviously, you can caveat that and say it could have been even better. Perhaps it should have been even better with, Liverpool probably should have beat Newcastle on Sunday. They were the worst team on the day. They just didn't show up. But I think if you replayed that game 10 times, Liverpool would have won 8 or 9 of those games. And in the Champions League as well, it came down to penalties. And I think if Liverpool had a bit of luck on the penalties, they could have gone on to the semi-final, the final, or even won that competition. So it could have been even better. But that does not take anything away from the achievements of Slot this season. He's come from the Dutch league, which, with all due respect to the Dutch league, is not one of the traditional big five leagues. And he's settled in, he's set the world alight. Obviously, everyone sort of thought Man City might be back with a 5th title, or they thought maybe Arsenal, it's finally their year. No one really was talking about Liverpool for the title. If you look back at the pre-season predictions, not many said Liverpool would win the title. And obviously they haven't won it yet, but they're 12 points clear and they will win the title. They've ran away with it. And anything of just the title is absolute nonsense for me. I think every fan will say the same.
Yeah, it is just absolute nonsense what's coming out at the moment from various outlets. And you talked about Arne Slot, who has had a great season. We, can still finish on 97 points, which is crazy to say when you think about it. Probably season-wise, though, it's not been the best of weeks, it's fair to say, because the exit from the European Cup, the Carabao Cup final defeat, he is a very intelligent man, a shrewd operator. What do you think he'll have almost taken from this week, Arne Slot? Because he always looks, he talks about that Forest game famously, repeatedly in his press conferences. What do you think will be the things that he almost takes from this or takes and learns from?
Well, what I wrote in one of my pieces this week, I've probably written it a few times because I end up writing so much, just say the same stuff over and over again. But what I wrote was like that old cliche that you learn more from times of hardship. And I think Slot will have learnt more about his team this week than he has done for any of the last few months. He now knows the limitations of the team, and there are limitations. There are weaknesses that need to be addressed this summer. And now he knows just exactly what he needs to do this summer for the team to take the next step. Because City will be back next season, I'm fairly sure of that. And Arsenal can only get better when they've signed a striker or when they've got Saka fit for a full season. So it won't be as easy next season. So to take that next step and make this not just a one-season wonder, not that it would be, is Slot knows what he has to do now in the summer. And I think he will have taken a lot of lessons. I think the main one for me is that front six isn't good enough. Or, well, it's good enough, but there's levels that need to be stepped up. I'm talking Nunes, Jota, Diaz, Chiesa. I think Gakpo's all right, but he's been injured a few times. And obviously Salah, best player in the Premier League this season, but he will be 33. So there does need to be some sort of. I would like to see two signings to that front line this summer. I think Liverpool would too, and as well left back. Maybe move out Costa Simicas and sign a new left back who's going to be the first choice with Robbo as the deputy, or B, Robbo has another year and this other new lad sort of, eases his way in. And I think they need another body in midfield as well, really, just to. Gravenberch's looked on his feet in the last month for me. Brilliant all season, but he needs to be rotated more. And I think if Slot had a more trusted member in the backup brigade, then I think that it would be much better for next season. So yeah, loads of learnings for Slot to ponder over these couple of weeks that he's got off now. I'm sure he's got his feet up somewhere sunny, and I'm sure he'll be thinking, I know what I need to do to make this team even better.
Yeah, well deserved as well. And Helio Matias asked a question there, which I think it is fair, and I kind of wanted to steer in towards saying, is it a small team manager, as in having used a quarter of his team under 1,000 minutes this season? Would it make a good reason why the players look drained against Newcastle? I suppose the context for this, Lewis, is, like you said, only one player was bought in, a 10 million opportunistic, as we heard it signing, of Federico Chiesa. Is it almost a case of until Arne Slot gets the opportunity, and we know it's not him that brings in the players, it's Richard Hughes, but to get more a player he likes, shall we say, it's unfair to make that assessment if he only trusts a certain amount at this stage?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's that old saying, you live and die by the sword. So obviously Slot has been very trustworthy and loyal to his core group of players. But has he at times maybe taken that too far? I'm thinking that Southampton game, the worst team in the league, Southampton, could he have made a few more changes? Could he have put his trust more in the likes of Chiesa, Harvey Elliott, Wataru Endo, maybe even Jarell Kwanzaa when Trent was fit as well? And has this 11 that he seems to like played almost too much in the last few months, that they've all ran themselves into the ground? I think you look at maybe the other teams that Liverpool are competing with City in their bad run. I felt like 7 or 8 of their players just all completely fell off a cliff at the same time.
Right.
Liverpool, this is only for 2 games, but I think, you look at really good players all season have all maybe looked like it's one game too much for them in the last week, all at the same time, rather than just one having a bad day. It's been 5 or 6. So I think he maybe is a small team manager. He likes that tight-knit group, but I think he maybe in hindsight will have realised maybe Elliott should have got a start here, or Endo, or even Chiesa. And then maybe that's a learning that he takes into next season, because it's going to be the same next season as well, with all the games piling up.
Yeah, Absolutely. And as much as we hope he takes it into next season, if he walks away as expected with a title win, there's very little more you can ask. But it will be interesting to see what the summer brings. And you mentioned that forward line. That is the one I wanted to ask you about. And I know you wrote about it literally only the other day, the forward line. And obviously, Mo Salah didn't have his best of games by any means at the Carabao Cup final. But as you pointed out in that article, he's contributed to 51% of the goals this season, more than any other player for their club. I mean, it has at times that others have had streaks in different bits, but it has at times felt a little bit like Salah or no one, hasn't it?
Yeah, definitely. So what I tried to put across in that article was that none of it was a slight on Salah, because he is human. He is allowed to have an off day. Yeah. It's just when he has an off day, who is there to take the game by the scruff of its neck? You look at Diogo Jota, you'd want more from him in terms of just going, you know what, we can tilt this game in our favour. And it feels like to me, when Salah has an off day, everyone else seems to have an off day as well. Apart from maybe, you look at them times when Núñez has come off the bench to win games late on. There was obviously Harvey Elliott in Paris came up and won the game. But aside from that, you don't really see Diaz maybe winning games on his own. Whereas in the last title-winning team, if Salah had an off day, you had Sadio Mane to bang in the goals, or Roberto Firmino. Whereas now, I just think of them 6 forwards, how many of them are actually contributing what they should be contributing? And I don't think many, when you look at Diaz, Núñez, Jota, Chiesa. As I said earlier, Gakpo's been injured, so it's hard to slate him for the last week. But if Salah doesn't turn up, it feels like none of them do. And it feels like that has to be an issue that Richard Hughes and Slot address this summer.
It is crazy that, they say, 12 points clear, how well they've done it in the league, 6 forwards, and maybe not Chiesa because he's played very limited minutes, but even he's had goals. All others have had streaks or purple patches. But literally, aside from Cody Gakpo, it seems, and there's different degrees of this, there is a few question marks against most of these forwards and whether they're at Anfield this season now, it feels, doesn't it, with the Núñez question, Diaz having a couple of years left to go. There is question marks across that forward line.
Yeah, definitely. I think as you say, aside from Cody Gakpo, 5 of the 6 have uncertain futures. So you've got Salah out of contract.
Yeah.
Núñez, very poor and linked away. Saudis are in for him. Seen a couple of links to Atletico as well. Diaz, obviously, Barcelona seem to be hot on him. Chiesa's hardly played. He's played less than half an hour in the Premier League. So aside from taking aside his decent cameo at Wembley, you have to say his future's uncertain as well. And Jota, he's not looked up to his usual self since he come back from that injury. And then you have to factor in, how long can you rely on such an injury-prone player? So 5 of the 6, massive question marks. Obviously, in an ideal world, Salah will sign on. But that is still uncertain as we get into mid-March. So
Yeah, it does seem insane we're talking about that. And we will talk about people, the contract question. Don't worry, we're going to grill Lewis on those as well. But trying to be, because people will naturally look for positives, and it's right to look for certain positives when you're 12 points clear at the top of the league. But transfer-wise, Lewis, you'll have seen the names. You'll have seen Alexander Isak at Newcastle, Julian Alvarez, the Argentinian Atletico forward, the latest one linked. What have you made of the links, and can you give us any insight if you think that there is definitely like 1, 2, a type of forward coming as well?
Yeah, well, I think the word that I've had in the last week or so is that it'll be maybe 4 or 5 signings this summer. I think it really will be a big summer for Liverpool. Wow. But that also includes 4 or 5 exits as well. So if you work through them, I would put my money on Nunes or Diaz leaving, maybe both. Obviously, I think Nunes is more certain than Diaz in that regard. I think you can say Kelleher will probably leave. One of the fullbacks will probably leave. And then we have to wait and see what else happens in the forward line. But yeah, Isak, a lot of that depends on where Newcastle finish in the league, I think. I mean, it doesn't change the fact that obviously he is the hottest property in the Premier League right now, if not Europe. But are Liverpool really going to do 150 million on one player? And if so, what's the knock-on effect if they do 150 mil on him? How much money do they have to spend elsewhere? So there's a lot of ifs and buts. A lot of it depends on the contract free, whether they stay, because if Virgil leaves, they'll have to sign a centre half, etc., etc. Who's the other one? Julian Alvarez.
Yeah.
Again, Atletico signed him for, what was it, like 100 million euros last summer. So they're not going to sell him for anything under that, which is already a lot of money. Good player, but a very good player. In fact, he's got a great record at City and Atletico and Argentina. But it's whether he would want to leave Atletico after just 1 year and whether they would even go to the negotiating table for under 100 mil. So there's obviously plenty of different strikers out there that could do something. Cunha at Wolves, obviously.
Yeah.
I think there's a bit of a bidding war for him this summer. Whether Liverpool are one of them, we'll have to wait and see. But I know that a lot of top clubs are keeping tabs on him. And then there's a few on the continent. The lad at Frankfurt, that Etikike or whatever his name is.
Yeah.
I feel like Paul Merson when I can't pronounce the name. but yeah, there's lots of names out there. But as I keep saying, it does depend on who leaves as well. So it's going to be a lot of change, I think, this summer, but a lot of moving parts. So it's hard to say, yes, this will happen and that will happen. But I think it'll be a fun summer, definitely.
I was going to say, I think most people feel it this way. Does it come down to, before we can definitely say who's coming in, it's what happens for those three big ones on the free transfers by the end of May, isn't it? It's if people expect Trent to leave, that will define the picture. What happens with Virgil and Salah, everything flows from those three, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Because if Salah leaves, all of a sudden you've lost, 30-something goals and 20-something assists. You've lost, as that stat says there, you've lost half of your goals in the team. Yeah. And that is absolutely mental. And I genuinely don't think there's a player in Europe that can contribute those numbers to a team. So whatever happens, if Salah leaves, the new boy is a downgrade. Obviously, they can grow into the team, but it will be a downgrade. Saying that, I don't see that happening still, even though we are in mid-March. And then with Virgil, you lose not just the best defender in Europe, but arguably the best captain in Europe as well. Yeah. Who's the leader? You know, if they were, for example, penciling in signing a left back, I think Robertson is the second best leader in the squad. I know he's not the vice captain, but I just watch him, how he operates in the dressing room, and watch him, on the training pitch, and see him talking to the other lads in the mixer, and he just seems to be a real good character. That's why I would 100% keep Robertson, even if they sign a left back this summer. So yeah, it all depends on who goes, and we still don't really know what's going to happen with that. Obviously, we know Trent and Real Madrid have sort of been flirting a bit with each other, but he could still decide to stay at Liverpool. So there's a lot of if, buts and maybes, as I keep saying. But as I said earlier, it will be a mad summer, I think. Fun for you guys to follow, not so fun for me to have to write on.
Well, yeah, I suppose fun might well depend for many on the contract situation and those big three. And I suppose that there's one place to start, the captain, Virgil van Dijk. I mean, You did sort of an articles. I know you spoke to him a number of times in the mix zone this season, and I know he'd said in the sit down you had with him, almost that was the calm bit of, even if my contract goes beyond the end of the season, stay calm. I'm not worried. You're not worried, and that was fine. And then two journalists from different countries. So Sam Maguire's article comes out, doesn't it, about the PSG links. Julian Lorenz, the French journalist, comes out and says, no, that's all nonsense. I mean, it was calm 5 minutes ago. What have you made of this whole sort of Van Dijk for all that's happened over the last few days?
Yeah, well, I know both Sam and Julian. I've spoke to both of them a few times, and both nice chaps. Everyone gets their different info, so I'm not really sure what the truth is on that one, really. Obviously, clubs around Europe would be foolish to not be keeping an eye on Virgil van Dijk, because if you are a big team in Europe, why would you not want to sign him this summer? But I always make the joke that we as reporters speak to Virgil more than we speak to our families, because when we speak to him after every match, very very thingy with his time, very always wants to speak to us, always gives us what we want. Model professional, really good leader. But the sense I always get from him is that he just loves everything about working for Liverpool and playing for Liverpool. Yeah. So I would be very, very surprised if he's not at Liverpool next summer, at the start of next season, just because he seems to love it. And I think we asked him like what he did to get over the PSG game, and he told us all about how he went to the theatre, to his kid's school to watch a bit of a film production, and then he was doing science homework with his daughter. He was in the pool with his son. He was out with his wife, and I just think you've got that lovely family life. You've got a brilliant team that you are the leader of. Why would he want to leave that behind and go and play somewhere else? And I just think if you take out the footballing element of it and just look at it as a personal thing, I think he's settled in Liverpool, and I think he seems to enjoy his life in England. So I really think that he will sign on. It's just whether the club are willing to pay him what he wants.
Yeah, and that might feel what it's coming down to. What he wants, what the club are prepared to offer, what is the gap at this stage between that. And I know you'll have clocked it in certain articles, and there's maybe a bit of speculation, worry, if you want to call it that, in the fan base, that with the restructuring behind the scenes, and we've heard that Julian Ward doing the contracts, Michael Edwards on sales, Richard Hughes, we're doing the incoming, speaking to agents, and the amendments. Is there anything you think into the element of, could there be almost a hard reset in the summer, that they're looking at maybe clearing out older players on bigger wages, changing that structure? Or do you think it's just people maybe reading too much into what's going on?
Yeah, there's probably a case to be made that could be considered, but because we know Fenway Sports Group do have the sort of unofficial policy of not extending contracts over a certain age, and we've seen that with several players in the past. But I just think these two, with Virgil and Mo, are just different kettles of fish. Like you have to make exceptions sometimes, and you look at how Virgil's played every single minute in the Premier League this season.
Yeah,
there's no chance that his body is just going to suddenly give up on him. I think normally with aging players, you can start to see signs that they are breaking down a little bit. You look around the league now, like KDB, you could sort of see last season that his body was packing him up, and now he's barely playing for City. Gary Neville at United in the past, but there's no signs at all with Virgil that he's past his, or even getting anywhere near past his peak. If anything, he's getting better. So I think that FSG may need to just think this is a superhuman athlete and we can make an exception here. The same with Mo. I don't think there's any harm at all in doing a 1+1 contract situation and just saying, you've got till the end of next season now, just kick the can down the road. It's annoying for everyone, but if you want to just trigger a little extension, you can, and then just keep that going until they are past the best. But in Virgil's case, he's the leader. So even say 3 years down the line, he's starting to look a bit leggy. He can still, you know, be that dressing room figure that can help with all of his experience and knowledge of how to win a Premier League. For if a younger lad did come in the future, and he can guide them through it in the training drills and whatever. So I don't see any logic whatsoever in letting them go.
It does just seem crazy. And I know it will be governed by, we know how Liverpool work, the data element, the analysis, the stats, everything that goes into that. Is it almost, I mean, in the most simplistic terms, if Mo Salah's responsible for 51% of Liverpool's goals, Virgil van Dijk probably is responsible for keeping out 51% of goals for Liverpool the other end. So if you were to take those two elements out, the team and where it is and where it can get to surely is weakened massively.
Yeah, I don't want to like overreact to any of that, but I do genuinely think if you take them two out, this team is maybe like sort of 5th, 6th, 7th in the table level. You know, you look at some of the teams that are in that area of the table, and like Newcastle, for example, like there's that sort of level. I just think what we were saying earlier about who's going to score the goals, and you know, I don't know if there is enough goal scorers, or at least people that are going to get into the 20s for the season in the team. And then at the other end, I think Virgil makes everyone look better.
Yeah.
I mean, Konate has been brilliant, but I do think that a decent chunk of that is because he's playing next to Van Dijk. And, you know, if all of a sudden it's Konate and Quansah every week, I don't think they'd keep half as many clean sheets as they do. Obviously, they'd still have Alisson behind them. But again, that's one for a year or two down the line. But he's not going to be here forever either. So I don't know. I just think they've got to keep him, whatever the data says.
Yeah, it's not really something, a hard reset that people want to fathom. We'll have to see what happens, but there is not long to sort of get them signed and sorted. And the final thing I want to ask you, because I know you've got the article out today and it drew attention, but the one thing that, and I won't ask you to reveal everything because naturally it is behind the Daily Mail there, but new Busquets, I've got to ask you about that one, because whenever someone mentions a new Busquets emerges, you've got to give us some insight on that one, Lewis.
Yeah, I'll give you this one for free. So I didn't actually write that bit. That was one of my colleagues, Luke Power, who's a very talented young lad who's just joined us on our grad scheme. I basically said to him, do you want to do a bit of a loan watch? So I got him to go and have a look at get him to watch Bajetic's games for Las Palmas, speak to a fan and a local journalist, and that's what he's done. And the local journalist said the style of play reminds him of Busquets. So maybe I've been slightly creative with my baited headline there. But he did mention Busquets. It wasn't made up out of the blue. So I think Bajetic is a really interesting one for the future, because obviously he had that tough first half of the season. But from everyone that we speak to over in Spain, he's doing really, really well. So, as I said earlier, Liverpool need an extra body in midfield. They sent Bajetic out on loan to beef up a bit. If he's done that, then there's no reason why he can't be part of the first team group next season. And I think he looked quite promising in pre-season as well, but he just needed regular game time after his long injury. So I wouldn't rule out at all Bajetic being part of the group next season if Slot likes the look of him. I'm sure he'll be given another chance to impress on the pre-season tour this summer.
Yeah, fingers crossed. It does feel like this summer really could be a little bit of make or break for Bajetic if he is going to carry on at Liverpool. So we'll see what that brings as well. And there we are, ladies and gents. We know the immediate things. Any talk of just a title is complete nonsense. Liverpool are 12 points clear. They're going to win it. There is so much to like about Arne Slot's first season. We know there's question marks about the contracts. There's question marks about the attack. There's question marks about many a thing, but it's shaping up to be a very exciting summer one way or the other. All it leaves me to say as ever for the time, the insight, sharing your thoughts and taking a little break out the sun, Lewis. It is much appreciated.
Thank you, mate. Thanks for having me.
And ladies and gents, that was another Media Matters